Hello everyone, this is Peak Entertainment and we're back again, and here now we have another video for you, and we're just going to give some quick thoughts over the recent announcement that the Writers Guild of America strike action has tentatively come to a close. Now the recent news came about on Sunday the 24th September 2023, where the Writers Guild reached an agreement with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, that's AMPTP for anybody who doesn't want to say that lengthy term, and the strike, which lasted for 146 days, has really been the biggest issue within movie entertainment for certainly the last 3 to 4 months, almost literally bringing the whole industry to a standstill. Now for anybody who doesn't know, the whole strike action came about where the writers and showrunners of programs were unhappy with the reducing of royalty payments or residuals that were owed to them for continued broadcasting of TV programming. Now in the days of the pre-internet, where we watched shows primarily on terrestrial or cable networks, programs ran in syndication, and any revenue generated from the programs in terms of commercials or endorsements would see the writers or the producers of those programs get a certain cut of any revenue that was generated. But as of now, when we are all in a complete whirlwind of streaming content, the level of residuals were becoming stagnant, with many streaming platforms and studios becoming very reluctant and far less willing to pay residuals to the writers and producers. Because the issue is that with streaming content, you don't get that same commercial revenue from programs, although that will soon change when we see many programs now intending to introduce ads into their programming 2024 onwards. But in terms of the revenue, the prime source comes from the amount of subscribers. So if the programs aren't being watched for as long or as often, then studios don't feel that they should be paying out the residuals because the programming isn't generating as much money. Now, of course, beforehand, you had no choice but to watch the program in its entirety when it was being broadcast on cable or terrestrial network. But now, of course, with streaming content, you can pause, rewind, watch for 10 minutes, take a break, watch 2 episodes of a season and then skip forward to the last 2 episodes of the season. So you're not getting that same amount of watch time that you would normally if it was being broadcast on cable networks. So the studios don't feel that the residuals are due if the programs aren't being watched as often. Why pay the actors or the writers the same amount of money if the content isn't generating the same amount of revenue? Now rightly so, the writers didn't agree to this alongside the clearly intended proposals by the studios to integrate AI much more into the use for creating programming. The writers feel that this would reduce the amount of work opportunities for them in the future, also with the fact that they feel it's still taking away the amount of residuals that are due to them, despite the fact that AI technically still uses the work that they have created for content. So after months and months of picket lines and speechifying and protesting, the writers and studios, it seems, have finally come to some sort of tentative agreement, which in the short term will cause many cause for celebration for many writers, producers and also content creators within the pop entertainment scene in general. As I mentioned before, the industry, it seems, was literally coming to a standstill. We've seen many high profile movies such as Dune Part 2 be moved until next year because, of course, the strike means that not only do future movies don't get produced, but also they cannot be promoted, which again affects the amount of profits and commercial revenue that can be generated. This impact was emphasised even further when the Screen Actors Guild, in terms of all of the Hollywood actors, also decided to join the writers in terms of the strike action. In a short little comment made by the Writers Guild committee shortly after the news broke, they simply stated that they could say with great pride that this deal was exceptional, with meaningful gains and protections for writers in every sector of the membership. They also made it very clear that nobody is to return to work until specifically authorised by the Guild. We are still on strike until then. Now, of course, intricate details of the contract agreement won't be released, and I'm sure there's plenty of little intricate details and quirks that can't be disclosed for legal reasons. So this doesn't mean that everybody will just be sprinting back to work and we're going to see a huge wave of all of these projects that were stopped mid-production coming back to full operation instantly. There's still a voting process that has to be complied with a final vote given, which will probably happen the early mid stages of this week. But it certainly is a positive step in the right direction. The committee continued to state that what they have won in this contract most particularly is everything that they have gained since May the 2nd when they went on strike, and that has been due to the willingness of the membership to exercise its power to demonstrate its solidarity, to walk side by side to endure the pain and uncertainty of the past 146 days. It is the leverage generated by your strike, with the extraordinary support of our union siblings, that finally brought the companies back to the table to make a deal. Now, of course, since the writers have come to some sort of agreement, it won't be too long before we see the Actors Guild also come to some sort of reconciliation as well. And of course, remember that the actors will have their own terms and conditions that they will look to be met before coming to some sort of agreement. So overall, again, as I said, this is very positive news, though we must also hold back a little bit and realise that this is only a tentative agreement. We do have to wait and see what exactly has been established in terms of the agreed conditions and how long those conditions will be upheld for. Generally, the Writers Guild will come together every 3 years or so to negotiate with the studios over certain deals. So for me personally, I think this is always good news for the writers. I've completely stood with them and their position to strike, because I always side with the creators. When they create an original piece of work and that work has gone on to make or generate lots of money and revenue, then 1000% the creator of that work deserves to get a certain cut of the revenue that's being made. Now, yes, the studios provide the money for the marketing and distribution, but at the end of the day, it's the creator whose work ends up making the money. If you don't have any creators, then essentially you don't have any money. And I've always felt it's been much more of a stubborn and, dare I say, stupid position by the studios to really try and fight it out with the writers for so long, because essentially they cannot really function without anybody creating work. This is why we've seen, of course, the intended proposals for them to try and bring AI into the mix, where essentially they could just push a couple of buttons and then let the algorithm do its work and then pump out content consistently. I've never been a real fan of AI in terms of trying to create new content, fresh content. I do really think it undervalues the whole art and effort that goes into producing storytelling and characterization and script and writing dialogue. To try and assume that just an algorithm can come in and replace that kind of skill and effort really is an insult, I think, to creators in general, and I think it also sets a bad precedent in the future. Taking away the disciplines of sitting down and trying to create more original content, great content, which ultimately takes time. As is the case nowadays, it's just really encouraging much more people to take the shortcut, the quick fix, the easy method, which whilst may generate content a lot quicker, normally means that the quality isn't quite there. And there's been so many arguments over the Writers Guild striking. A lot of people side with them. Many people take the opposite view, that because a lot of the television programming, in their personal opinion, which hasn't been great, then why should they deserve any maintenance or increase in terms of revenue? But that's never really been the point. Regardless of whether you think programs or content or movies are good or not, which really is subjective to your own personal opinion, at the end of the day, the writers have spent X amount of weeks, hours, months creating that overall content, and they deserve to be rewarded if that content is being reused again for monetary gains. And it really is as simple as that. I think people get too distracted when venturing much more into the culture war, or whether they feel that the actors are too pretentious or entitled. That doesn't really bear relevance in terms of the overall ethic of a creator getting their due monies for the work that they are creating. So overall, I'm pleased that the writers have finally got, it seems, what they've wanted overall. I would imagine there'll probably be some major stipulation in terms of the use of AI, because I think that was one of the real big sticking points in the strike, is that overall the writers didn't want it where AI was being used, which basically leeches off original content anyway, which would have resulted in them getting less work and also no residuals for the content that they were making. So we'll see what happens in the future in terms of what's actually released, but I really think that would have been one of the major wins by the writers in terms of ending this overall strike action. So as I said before, it won't be too long before the actors, I'm sure, will end their striking as well. Who knows, maybe they've already privately come to an agreement, but perhaps they wanted the writers to have their moment in the sun first, given that they were the first people to initiate this action, and they didn't want to do anything to take away from their spotlight. So overall, good news for the writers in general, and I guess we won't really see the industry get back into full swing probably for up to maybe 4 or 5 months. We'll obviously see more announcements coming through. Who knows? We may see many films that have been pushed back to next year maybe be pulled forward again for the next couple of months. But again, that's all speculation at this point. So those are my overall thoughts and feelings on the recent news that the writers' strike action has come to an end tentatively, and they have finally reached some sort of agreement with the motion picture studios. As again, we'll wait and see what happens, what future effects that has in the next upcoming months. But I'm sure many YouTubers that cover this are very glad, as it will give them far more content in the future. But let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you have any other suggestions regarding any other movies, topics, or entertainment or television series that you'd like to see me cover within the near future, let me know in the comments and I will see if I can provide further commentary for you on that subject matter within the future. Please consider hitting like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves and I will see you very, very soon.